no tactics. Stage 19 is just a matter of time. This is going to be a great day for the sport.
But there's a marvellous battle going on there for second place, Adrian. And we want to know now who'll finish second and third on the podium in Paris. There's just over 2 minutes cover the next four riders. You can win or lose that on a stage like today. So Richard Virenque is in second place, Ugrimov is third, Pantani is fourth, and Luc Leblanc is fifth. I wonder what will happen today.
After what Ugrimov accomplished the past 2 days, can he do it for a third day in a row? The mountain time trial, basically a race for second place. We started this morning with 119 riders. 114 have already left the starting gate. The time to beat, 1 hour, 28 minutes, 8 seconds, set by Russian Vladislav Bobrik. An inside look now from Paul Sherwin, who came up this Indurain. This was it, the mountain time trial. The final five in which Indurain is in will come out shortly, but right now to Phil and Paul.
Well, thanks, Adrian. And here's the man now who's dreaming of a place in Paris, but he has a lot of work to do, Luc Leblanc, if he's going to claim that alongside Indurain in just 2 days' time. Leblanc lying fifth overall, and the riders starting out of the start house every 2 minutes, and just 5 men left to go. A very, very nervous moment.
It is, and you can see the actual little bit of stubble on his chin there, meaning that he hasn't shaved this morning, putting everything to one side, because riders believe that if they shave the day of a race, they lose just that little bit of energy. And as Luc Leblanc launches himself off on this time trial, he wants every possible attribute on his side.
Well, the mountain today is throwing just about everything at the riders, because it's sunny down here at the start in Cluse, but in fact, once they get halfway up the mountain, it's raining, and then they go into cloud, and the rain on top of the mountain is coming and going. It could be either dry or wet by the time Luc Leblanc arrives at Avoriaz. Well, he's doing the wise thing, Paul, like all of these riders. They don't come out of the start house flat out. They ride themselves into the course.
The first 1.5, 2 kilometers is actually the most important part of a time trial, because if you do start too quickly, you go very easily into oxygen debt, and then it's hard to get your rhythm going again, especially with such a tough finish today. Nobody wants that.
A little bit higher up the mountain and give you a feel for the climb here. This is Enrico Zaina, 300 meters to go for him at Avoriaz. The best time so far by Vladislav Bobrik, the Russian rider who once led the Tour du Pont, or as it was known then, the Tour de Trump back in 1989, now a professional. He's home and dry. There was no rain on the way up for Bobrik, and his time in the house 1:28.08, but we're going to see a new leader's time now. Zaina coming in for Italy, 1:27.16, and that's a good time. Just over 20 miles an hour, his average speed, and remember, virtually all of this climb is uphill. He's a teammate of Luc Leblanc, Pascal Lino. He's over the first section of the course, and he's just 9 seconds off the best time at this point.
You can see today, although it is a time trial, nobody's really taken any of the high technology bikes that we've seen in some of the flatter time trials. The reason being, when they get onto the climb, it's going to be very imperative to be able to use a normal bike to pull on the handlebars and climb. The only actual advantage that Pascal Lino has put on his bicycle here is the very high profile rims that you can see, the big black things on the wheels there. The reason that riders have done this is to increase some kind of aerodynamics, but obviously no disc wheels, because they're much too heavy to drag up a mountain slope.
Bo Hamburger, he had a win down in Treselac a couple of weeks ago, in fact almost 2 weeks ago. It's a long time, this Tour de France, but Hamburger now finishing his second tour in a very high position indeed. He's fighting now for a place in the top 20, and his time's not too bad. It's more or less where he is lying overall at the moment, as he now chases the time of Remo Rossi, the computer counting down as his time moves over. He's about halfway up the climb. This is the Czech at 24.1 kilometers. The best time here was Bobrik, but of course Vladimir Pulnikov, who's setting the best time a bit lower down the mountain, is yet to arrive at that 24 kilometer, which is 15-mile point. In the start house, Marco Pantani now trying to fight back into third place overall. He lost it by just 2 seconds yesterday when Peter Ugrimov won the stage, and then the clock counted Pantani 2 seconds out, and he dropped to fourth. It's a narrow margin. If this man's knee is okay, well, who knows what sort of ride he'll do. And a glimpse there of Jean-Francois Bernard. He's won a mountain time trial before, back in 1987 on that great mountain Mont Ventoux, where this race crossed last Monday.
Just there being watched actually by his brother, who's the mechanic for the Banesto squad. And it's amazing that Jeff has been such a good domestique to Miguel Indurain. He's actually talking about leaving the Banesto squad next year to start up his own team.
So Jeff is finding his rhythm again. You can see now that where he is, the rainstorm has passed through. It was a torrential shower, and it's thankfully gone away again, and the crowd enjoying the passage there of Jean-Francois Bernard. And one of the yellow jerseys of this year's Tour de France, the only yellow jersey not to finish at the moment, Chris Boardman, the early race leader. But Flavio Vanzella took the lead when the race finished in Brighton in Great Britain, and then he lost it back to his teammate Johan Museo, and then followed Sean Yates, and finally Miguel Indurain. Vanzella coming over, feeling he's had a great tour, and finishing even a good ride for him, 24th place at the minute. Back down to the start house now, Peter Ugrimov, planning another assault in the Alps perhaps. The last 2 days he's been the champion of these mountains. If he's any strength left, then he's got to deliver the blow today that will take him to Paris in third or even second position, Paul.
Or even second position, I think, because, you know, this is the man who really pushed Miguel Indurain last year in the Giro d'Italia. He was the one who pushed him on the final mountaintop finish and then in the final uphill time trial, which is the most significant part of today's race.
So a start then for the Latvian Ugrimov. He shoots out of the start house in Cluj. Climbing starts very quickly as they get up to Leger. And my goodness me, if anybody can climb these mountains today well, then surely it is him. He finished second in last year's Tour of Italy, pushing Miguel Indurain all of the way. It could well be he'll be able to claim a second place finish in the Tour de France by the end of this ride. That's if he's still got the legs after what has been 2 marvellous attacking days for him over the mountains of the Alps. Back up to Udo Bolts, finding his rhythm here, still in the warm sunshine, and he's still a long way to go. He's gone through the first check, 30 seconds off the time being set there by Vladimir Pulnikov, who's gone through in 15 minutes and 47 seconds. As we now see Vyacheslav Yekimov coming up. Well, the mountain time trial he rode in America, the Tour du Pont, he won that and went on to win the race. But his time is not bad, Paul. It's going to be, I think he'll be 6th place finish for him. He's going to chase the time of Artūras Kasputis from Lithuania, and he'll beat that. And so Yekimov has had a good ride up the mountain today, but he's no longer a challenger in this year's Tour. And so Ugrimov has gone. The man to start behind him is Richard Virenque, the polka dot jersey, his now as king of the mountains in this year's Tour de France. But he would so dearly love to hold on to a podium place. Second place in the Tour de France for him would be a formidable result. He looks young, he is young, and the only man left to chase him up the mountain today, the big man himself, Indurain.
Well, that should spur him on a little bit, knowing that Miguel Indurain starts 2 minutes behind him on this time trial, and it really is a great day for Richard Virenque. He has to put his best time trial of his life in today to try and stay on the podium, because he's really going to be pushed by Marco Pantani and Ugrimov, and also Luc Leblanc if he can do an excellent ride. But I think it would be a superb performance by this little rider here as he goes down off on his way to the top of this mountain, and he's really going to push himself all the way.
You can bet your life he's really going to try and push himself right into his rhythm straight away here. He's full of enthusiasm, and let's hope he does. This is Bjorn Ries coming up the hill here. He's caught the man that started in front of him, and he was a challenger, but he had the one bad day that all top bike riders fear in the Tour de France. He came 3 days ago in the Alps, and that wrote him out of the script for a high finish like he had in last year's event. But even so, you can see the quality here as we approach the 24 kilometers point of his riding. He's going to run very close to the time of Jean-Francois Bernard, just a little bit slower. Charlie Motet has gone through. He's already on his way up to the summit now. He's passed through at 33 kilometers, still holding second best time there. And Ries goes through in the 4th best. No, in fact, the clock hasn't stopped yet. And he heads up to the time check, settled in to his rhythm once more. This is the area that caught the rainstorm a little bit earlier. And Ries goes through 40 seconds off the leaderboard. That's not bad. First chance to see Alex Zula, who came to this race possibly as 3rd or 4th favourite to win it. He's been a little bit disappointing, I think, because he's hardly attacked the whole race, Paul.
Well, I think he's been on his limit for most of this race. He really has tried to accompany Miguel Indurain whenever he can, but he has been a little bit of a deception. Although he rode a very good Tour of Spain this year, he's maturing slowly, and maybe in a couple of years' time he'll be able to come back as a major challenger. But at the moment, it's very difficult for anybody to push Miguel Indurain off the top of the leaderboard.
Well, I think everybody would second that, and as we get down towards the base of the climb here in Tanyin. This is Zula making his way through.
Interesting to know, though, with this Once squad, they're not scared to try any kind of new innovations, because last year they were using on the flat time trials. They were the first professional team to actually come in and use the Lotus Sport bike, the bike that we saw Chris Boardman win the prologue on earlier this year. And in fact, Zula here is using an American bicycle, a Klein, which is quite strange because it's a very large tube machine, but extremely light. And this is Miguel Indurain.
Miguel Indurain now on the start line, just brushing his tyres down for what for him is the first time he's approached a mountain time trial as leader of the Tour de France. And now he's going to show everybody, I think, today that he doesn't mind what sort of course you throw at him. He still really is the very, very best. The last man to go of the survivors of this year, the Tour de France, the man who's projected himself far and away the best rider in this race. And now he prepares for the assault of Avoriaz. A few minutes of concentration, a few deep breaths to fill those big lungs, and then will come the launch from the start house. Indurain goes on his way. The whole field in the Tour de France is in front of him. His eyes firmly set, though, on the man 2 minutes up the road, Paul Virenque.
Well, he won't be very long, I don't think, before he sees Richard Virenque. As soon as we start to climb, Indurain will get that big engine of his going. And you see he's actually adopted, like everybody else in the time trial today, for a standard bicycle. The only addition is those little tri-bars that he's put in the middle. He needs a standard bicycle to get up this mountain, to climb the col up to here in Avoriaz.
Well, it's almost a casual start. There's no big effort like we saw with Virenque leaving the start house. He almost looks as though he's going at club run speed here.
He really does look as if he's pulling very hard at the moment. Or I tell you, once we get to the climb, Miguel Indurain will put his turbocharger in there, and I think he will start to lift his rhythm.
So Indurain now, the lonely road ahead of him, but for how long will it be before he starts seeing riders in front? Remember, he's behind all of his challengers in this year's race, and the 4 men in front of him are scrapping out there for second place in Paris behind this man. His overall the lead this morning, 7 minutes and 22 seconds. It's impossible to lose that in the time trial today, and if it goes his way, he might even build it up a little bit as well. The best times through the checks at the moment, Vladimir Pulnikov is leading at 9.5 kilometers, but the top names are still to arrive there. And the best time in the finish is Enrico Zaina, 1 hour, 27 minutes and 16 seconds.
Now at the 9-kilometer split, the earliest point to compare the final four challengers, really. Luc Leblanc set the best time of 15 minutes, 24 seconds. Just after that, Ugrumov beat Leblanc's time by 24 seconds. Now we're waiting for Virenque to reach that point.
Well, this is Luc Leblanc now heading up towards the 24-kilometer, 15-mile checkpoint. And here now is Richard Virenque at the check at 9 kilometers. Ugrumov is the best time here. 15 minutes dead ahead of Pantani and Leblanc, so the stars are fighting it out among themselves, and we'll wait for the time of Richard Virenque. But he looks to have settled in nicely. You can see Avoriaz in the distance and the clouds hanging over the top as the rain comes down. But Richard Virenque, in fact, has gone through 58 seconds slower than Ugrumov, so he's slipping a little bit. More importantly, Paul has also lost considerable time to Pantani as well.
Well, he's lost an awful lot of time to both of those riders. In fact, he's got 1 minute and 33 seconds advantage over Peter Ugrumov this morning in the overall standings, and at the moment, he's lost almost a minute in the first 10 kilometers.
So it's not looking good for Richard Virenque. He's going to have to make an awful lot of going when this course gets a lot steeper towards the end. He's going to have to pray, I think, too, that Ugrumov cracks a little bit on the steep section of the course. He's getting himself quickly back into his rhythm. Anyway, his manager behind will be shouting at him on the loud hail system to try and keep him at the ultimate of his speed.
Well, that was a very fast start for him. In fact, he's going downhill now into the town of Tanyin. This is Luc Leblanc, who's already on the climb up to Léger. Leblanc actually doesn't look as if he's in very good shape at the moment, although he went through the first time check just 24 seconds off the time of Pietro Ugrumov. He doesn't really seem to have to go at the moment. He's fighting with his bicycle, and obviously he's had a hard time over the last couple of days. He's attacked whenever he can in the mountains, I think to try and save his position in the overall standings, because he feared today's time trial.
I think one of his big mistakes, Paul, was trying to go with the attacks of Pantani when he couldn't possibly match that man in the mountains.
The Yes, it was a real shame, I think, that Pantani actually crashed, because if he hadn't had that injured knee, I feel sure he would have made a much better go of it yesterday. He really had a lot of problem. In fact, I was talking to one of the Italian commentators who said he hardly slept the night before the final Alpine stage there, and he had to keep putting ice on his leg to try and bring the swelling down a little bit. But an incredibly heroic ride by him yesterday.
Well, as we switch up to the mountain, the rain coming down very heavily now, but the arrival of little Charlie Motte riding his last Tour de France, and he's going to have the pleasure of putting the leader's time on the board, at least till the arrival of the top men in this race. He's had an excellent climb, this little man, who is in fact a native of the Alps here, and he finishes best time so far, 1 hour 27 minutes and 11 seconds. Now here is Marco Pantani at the 9-kilometer point, 22 seconds slower, and we now have the time of Indurain. Here's the situation of how the overall classification looks after 9 kilometers of the time trial. Virenque is losing ground to Indurain, and Ugrimov is closing in, and Pantani is in 4th place and also losing ground to Ugrimov.
There's still a long way to go, and I think Miguel Indurain started very conservatively in this time trial. He realizes how hard the final climb is going to be up to Morzine Avoriaz, and this little man here is doing a great job at the moment. He's obviously recovered quite fantastically from the injuries that he's had. He's got a very bad knee, and in fact, talking to some of the people around here, that knee has caused problems with his left thigh as well, because he hasn't been pedaling in a balanced style that he would normally.
Well, he has a very short position and a very high setting there of his tri-bars, as it keeps his body nice and upright. And he's in the pleasant section of the course at the moment, where the sun is warm and the crowd down there enjoying themselves. It could all change in the next half hour or so as they get higher up the mountain. And this is the first chance we've got to see how the Czechs are improving amongst the leaders. Luc Leblanc, when he arrived at that 5-mile checkpoint at 9.5 kilometers, he went through there at that time with the best time, but the other boys still to follow. But now we head up towards the Czech here at 15 miles at 24 kilometers at Leger, and he's pushing the time of Bobrick, and he should be better than that. So Leblanc, the top 5 contenders, proving they really are the best 5 in the race, is now going to set a new trend here at this Czech here.
He's doing a great performance so far. He really has kept his rhythm. He started off quite nicely, going over the top of the first check at Côte de Châtillon with an excellent time, and now it looks as if he comes through here at Leger. He's going to have the best time of the moment.
Well, Bobrick, the fastest time here. He's not the fastest time at the finish now. That is Charlie Motte with a time of 1 hour 27 minutes and 11 seconds. Motte holding a slower time than Bobrick at this point, but it doesn't matter now because Leblanc has gone through with the best time thus far. Still Pantani, Ugrimov, Virenque and Indurain to follow. And this is Ugrimov. He is the leader on the course at that first check with 15 minutes dead, better than Miguel Indurain, who is behind him on the road. And now he's going to try and monitor that as he goes up towards the summit. He's still at the moment something like 5 minutes away from arriving at the next checkpoint. And now here comes Marco Pantani to the same point where we've just seen Leblanc go through. Leblanc has the leaderboard at this point, 41 minutes and 55 seconds. Pantani was a little bit, only 2 seconds better than Leblanc at the first check, but it looks now, Paul, as though Pantani is opening up the gap on Leblanc.
He really is. He's done an excellent ride over the first part of this course, and let's not forget that the last part of the course is really his own domain, because once you get onto the small chainring and the road tilts up very steeply towards Avoriaz, that's when this man is going to make the big difference, and it may well be that Luc Leblanc is actually starting to crack a little bit.
Well, Pantani isn't faltering at this minute. Look at that, 41 minutes, 13 seconds, 42 seconds now quicker than Luc Leblanc. So he's added another 40 seconds in the last few miles. Well, the gauntlet is down now because Ugrimov, for the 3rd day in succession, is giving us the pain on his face and all of the power out of those legs. He's heading up now again to this check. We've just seen Pantani set the best time ahead of Leblanc, and now Ugrimov is going to alter the leaderboard yet again, and he's going to be a nice big margin separating the other 2 riders here, and I'm afraid to say spelling doom for Richard Virenque, because I don't think he's going to get anywhere near Ugrimov on the road today. The crowd cheering on the rider from Latvia, and the clock's going to stop at 40 minutes, 18 seconds, almost a minute quicker now than Marco Pantani. That's tremendous. A little bit further up the road, and it's not that far now. Richard Virenque is heading in to the checkpoint here at 24 kilometers at Léger. And you can see as the computer counts him down and drops him down the overall leaderboard that Richard is now vying for 7th place and going on towards 8th. So he is over 2 minutes now behind Ugrimov.
And in fact, Phil, he's just now, at this instance, 42 minutes and 42 seconds, gone behind Marco Pantani. So he's dropped down from 2nd place to 4th overall. And we see that little jump of the gears there. That's the sign of a man who is really suffering. He's trying everything he can. His gears jumped and he's lost a little bit of rhythm, but he's still fighting. And he's going to have to fight very hard, I think, over the last 10 kilometers of the race today to make sure he can keep ahead of Luc Leblanc, his teammate.
Well, the time trial can be so cruel to a rider who's ridden his heart out over 3 weeks, and then in just a short ride of little more than an hour and 20 minutes, he loses the lot. And that seems to be now what is happening to Richard Virenque.
Phil, you're right as we take another look at it. Basically, this is fatigue. Virenque is so spent, he's falling apart. See him slip gears, looks like he's close to crashing. And another thought, Miguel Indurain hates to race in the rain as he goes up the mountain. Let's get back on course now.
And now Miguel Indurain, his face a little bit pained, which is indicating he's putting his heart and soul into this race today. As he starts to move up now, he is outside the time already of the leader Ugrimov. He's chasing the time of Pantani. He's going to get that, but only just. Pantani is also riding well on the climb today. Big Mig is finding the guns around him, have found themselves some live ammunition as he comes up towards the check here, and he is going to be behind Pantani. In fact, he's down to 3rd, and that is a surprise. He's losing ground.
Well, he had a right reason to be scared of the final week of the Tour de France this year, that's for sure, because now he's gone behind the 2 climbers, the men who knew that they had a chance of dethroning him in the final week of this year's Tour de France, and I'm quite surprised to see him so far behind. In fact, he's still coming up to the time check now, and he's going to be very close to even Luc Leblanc's time.
And in fact, Indurain is 3rd, Leblanc is 4th, and so Indurain now is finding the men behind him at the end of the Tour, as they did last year, are closing the gap a little bit.
The Michelin race summary gives us our situation. Piotr Ugrimov, for the 3rd day in a row, is chewing up the toughest tour course in years. He has better splits than Pantani and Indurain. Indurain doing what he has to stay in yellow, but the man who started the day 2nd overall is close to collapse. He has almost crashed twice. A look at the principals. Indurain to the right, Pantani to the left, and to look overhead as the weather seems to be clearing. It looks like the polka dot jersey, Phil.
That's Richard Virenque. As we pull back on our helicopter here, we're going to pick up the yellow jersey of Miguel Indurain. But Paul, he's taking a long time to close the gap on somebody like Virenque today.
Well, he definitely is to begin with. He pulled back over 2 minutes, but the first part of the course definitely suited Miguel Indurain even more than it did Virenque. But once we've got to the climb, Virenque has just managed to lift the pace a little bit, and Indurain can't bridge that last 1 minute gap between them.
Which perhaps tells us something that Indurain hasn't entirely enjoyed this final week of the Tour de France in the Alps. He's had his bad days. He had a bad day on the way to Val Thorens. He made amends yesterday when he beat Virenque in the sprint finish down in the start town this morning of Cluse. But you know, when you ride a time trial, you can't deceive anybody. You always have to do your best, and your best is what we see.
That's all it is. It's man against himself in a time trial, and especially a mountaintop finish is really an unbelievably difficult time to race. Indurain here looks to me now as if he's starting to feel the pain quite a bit. This is the first time I've actually seen him getting out of the saddle to try and get himself going again. He's having a tough time, Miguel, today.
And the crowd that we became used to seeing every year on the top of Alpe d'Huez, now here on the Voriaz, are watching the key men in this year's Tour de France come to the summit. And this is Marco Pantani, his first Tour de France, and we've come to like him very much. And here's the rider who indeed won at the top of Alpe d'Huez, finishing now, Roberto Conti. Well, he's going to make about 7th or 8th for the time he gets up to the line, I think. He might just, well, it's been a good ride indeed by Conti to match the climb of Alex Zula. He'll be a little bit behind Zula when he finally comes up to the line. The 200 meters is a long way at the top of a mountain. and now he's matching the time of Vladislav Bobrick, the early lead. He just beats him, and Conti goes into 6th place. Further down the slopes now, and once we get into the divided road here, we see Pantani will know that indeed he's nearing the end. In fact, Paul, you were telling me earlier that he came up here, was it 11 o'clock last night, to look at the finish?
He came up here last night with his team manager. They rode the last couple of kilometers, and then he ended up driving back to his hotel. But there were so many people trying to come up here to put themselves in place to see the race today. He didn't get back to his hotel till 11 o'clock last night.
That's late, but it hasn't altered the way he's ridden today, I don't think, because apart from Ugramov, he's been racing through the time checks with excellent times. Meanwhile, the yellow jersey still labouring at the last man on the road as we go back up to the kilometre point now. 1 kilometre from the end of the time trial, the end of the mountains in the Tour de France. And I think the reward for Pantani will be a well-deserved place on the winner's podium in Paris in 2 days' time, but not as the winner.
Not as the winner, but it's going to be fantastic, and I really am glad to see that he's managed to climb up into the top 3 placings in the overall standings, because if he hadn't had that horrendous crash a couple of days ago, I'm sure he would have attacked again yesterday and really would have got there anyway. But it's such a shame that he's not managed to win a stage in the Tour de France this year. I think next year, though, he's going to come back a much more experienced rider and may well be the man that can get rid of Miguel Indurain.
And now the arrival of the first of the top 5 at the start line this morning, Luc Leblanc. He's responded well to the climb. He's done his very, very best today for France and for his team Festina, because he's been setting the mark all the way through the checkpoints as the best time as he's run through them. And he's going to be the best time on the line as well. He's comfortably ahead of a great ride there by little old Charlie Motte, riding his final Tour de France. But Luc Leblanc is going to set the trend now. The rain still coming down on the summit. Leblanc, the best time, 1 hour 26:49.
That has to be the best time Charlie's ridden in his life, but in fact Marco Pantani has almost caught him by the top of the finish here. There's just 350 meters to go for Pantani, so he started 3 minutes behind Luc Leblanc at this climb, so he's going to finish with about 2.5 minutes advantage over the little Frenchman.
And now at last we see the face of Pantani. We've been denied that all the way up the climb because of our cameras not being allowed ahead of the riders, because of it being a time trial. But now from our fixed cameras, Pantani sprints towards them. And we've just seen Leblanc set the trend, and we're now going to see Pantani take it to fresh heights here as he sprints home. There's a lot at stake in the Tour de France for these riders today, and they come to the summit of Avoriaz. Marco Pantani gets the lead now, 1:24:37, an increase of 2 minutes and 12 seconds over Leblanc.
Further down the mountain, Pietro Ugramov is still riding a steady pace up to Avoriaz here, and he's never looked one moment as if he's going to crack. He uses quite a big gear. If we get the chance to look at Miguel Indurain a little bit later, you can see the fact that Indurain uses a slightly smaller gear and turns over with a very high revolution, but unfortunately he's not been able to get the big gears going on the mountain here today, and Ugramov looks very much now as if he's going to walk away with his 2nd stage victory in a row.
Well, this for me has been the man of the Tour this week in the Alps. He's attacked every day. Indurain has watched and conserved his energy, but this man has gone out and delivered the blows whenever it's been possible. He was robbed by Nelson Rodriguez at the finish at Val Thorens. He took amends yesterday when he finished alone after breaking clear before the Col de la Colombière. And today he was afraid, and he actually said it yesterday, I think I'll be too tired to ride well in the time trial tomorrow. Well, he must have felt from the gun today he wasn't, because Peter Ugramov comes to the line with a time that will survive the passage of time today. It's going to be a great time. He's going to be the winner of the time trial. He's going to go home for the Tour de France, saying he also was one of the few men in the world who has beaten Miguel Indurain at his own game. 1 hour, 22 minutes and 59 seconds, a minute 38 better than that talented climber Marco Pantani. So the young man who will be crowned the King of the Mountains 1994 in Paris may have lost out as far as the top 3 finish goes in this year's Tour de France, but he's certainly nothing at all to be ashamed of. He's ridden fine today. He's held off the man himself, Miguel Indurain. The cars all being pulled away now from the leaders as they race up the line. The last 2 men on the road today. We've already got Ugramov finished with the best time of the day, 1 hour, 22 minutes and 59 seconds. That's a minute and 38 seconds better than Pantani. And Luc Leblanc in 3rd place, and neither of these 2 men will disturb the leaderboard today, and that is something of a surprise, at least to us, because we really did feel that Miguel Indurain would come up today and demonstrate just what a great time trialist he is. But he's had a very, very difficult climb.
I tell you what, the way he just went back down and sat in the saddle there indicates to me that he really hasn't got the big power that he had at the early part of this year's Tour de France. He really didn't have the power needed to accelerate and keep the rhythm going. He's suffering an awful lot today, Miguel Indurain. He's going to walk away with the Tour de France, but once again, it's very strange to me that the man who's made him tremble once again, like last year, was Pietro Ugrimov, who actually almost took the Tour of Italy away from him in the last few days.
Yes, indeed. He lost the Tour of Italy by less than a minute to Miguel Indurain. But now he's going to be able to say he's not only finished second in the Tour of Italy last year, but with just a little bit of luck and no accidents on the next couple of days of racing, he'll finish second overall in the Tour de France. So a final sprint to the line for the King of the Mountains, Richard Virenque. And let's hope he hangs on into a place in the top 5, because he has slowed dramatically as the stage has gone on. He certainly won't be in the top 3 now.
He may well have dropped down to 5th place in the overall standings because he's lost an awful lot of time there. You see, he's 1 hour and 28 minutes is a long way off the leaderboard. 6 minutes already behind Pietro Ugrimov.
A big slice lost indeed as Virenque comes up and is alongside a rider like Giancarlo Perini. And normally he would have beaten him any time of the day on a mountain, but today he hasn't. And in fact, it's going to pass on even further than that to Bjorn Ries, a high finisher in last year's Tour de France and lost a lot in the mountains this year. Now down to Franco Coccioli and Yekimov, both stage winners in previous tours, and 6 minutes 04 conceded 17th place then for Virenque. And then immediately behind the man himself, to the cheers of the crowd, beaten today into... Well, it's going to be close. It's going to be very close. It looks like he's got 3rd place, Paul, so he's come back well over the last few kilometres of the climb. Miguel Indurain finishes in 3rd place on the stage today, and that in itself will be certain for him to conserve his lead overall in the Tour de France.
Piotr Ugrimov, 3 days in the mountains, 2 of them he took first. Fantastic performance. Pantani did the best he could fighting that knee and thigh injury, and Miguel Indurain finishes 3 minutes 16 seconds back. Disappointed? Not so you'd notice. He told us that he's really happy. A 2-day trip to Paris will be an easy one. He is sure he will win. What about a 5th yellow jersey? Well, he said, let's just get that 4th one first. Indurain can afford to be confident because barring any accident or disaster, he will wear the yellow jersey the day after tomorrow on the Champs-Élysées. Piotr Ugrimov jumps from 3rd to 2nd with his 1st place time trial finish today, and Marco Pantani is in 3rd. Frankie Andreo, last American left, in 92nd. After a hard day on the hill, how about a popular cola drink, a few flowers, a little friendship for Piotr Ugrimov.